Cap rate is a really simplistic term, okay, but it's an overcomplicated way of essentially just saying, if I bought the property in cash, what would be my rate of return per year on the money invested? I went on over the next 4 years to go on a crazy run where, by the age of 25, I was making about $1 million a year in the business.
We know all real estate agents want to acquire clients consistently so that they can grow their business and income for that great lifestyle. This broadcast brings you the best and top people in the industry to support that quest. This is Dave Fanale, and I'm here to bring you the Real Estate Skill Builder broadcast, Real Estate Talk TGIF, brought to you by Real Estate Skill Builder and Align, your premier real estate solution. And we are back. Here we are. This is Real Estate Talk TGIF episode 406, 401 weeks in a row. And we move forward, we move on, and we've got a lot of special things going on over the next 6 to 12 months as we continue to do this broadcast. But we have Henry Eisenstein on today, and I want to welcome him back. It's almost 3 years since he's been on. He's one of the most, it's a real great transformation story in real estate. Henry went from battling depression as a teenager to becoming today that 31-year-old commercial real estate broker involved in, I guess, almost $1 billion in transactions. You run a whole bunch of different things, but you have a 40-plus agent team. You manage over $15 million in assets, which is amazing. You've helped more than 1,000 agents and across the country. You've helped them earn over $100,000 in real estate. You know, you're originally from where I'm standing right now in New Jersey, and you're in Miami. You built a business on something most agents avoid. Relentless prospecting, disciplined follow-up, a daily schedule built around talking to property owners, and a daily schedule, period. And today we're going to talk a little bit about the mindset behind it, the process behind it. I'm really interested in schedules and tools and all that stuff. And Henry, thank you so much for being on today.
Again, thank you for having me, Dave. I'm happy to be back.
So this is really cool. So we got to start out with one quick question that I always ask everybody on this broadcast is, what does TGIF stand for?
Everyone goes to thank God it's Friday, but I probably would say thank God it's Fanale.
Yeah, well, that's really cool. I'm glad you got it. You are one of the few that do get it. And there's a lot of repeat guys that come on this and don't get it. Anyway, here we are. Okay. A lot of great things in your life, and it doesn't start easy as your life, changed and twisted and turned, in your younger years. I mean, younger years, you're 31 now, right? And a lot of things have happened, and a lot of it has to do with determination and just saying, I'm going to say, maybe you just said, fuck it, and just decided to move forward and do it. Right. So talk to me about your journey into where you are today and how it relates to how you're helping agents.
Yeah, so like many of us, I got in the industry because a friend of mine was in the industry, and they talked about how much money they were making at the time. I later found out that the reason why he claimed he was making $20,000 a month was because he helped his mom sell her house, helped her buy a house, and then got a referral from somebody, right? So he ended up making like 20 grand, and he claims that he made 20 grand a month. And I was like, wow, if you're making 20 grand a month, I can make 20 grand a month, and I got to check this industry out. So I ended up quitting my corporate job. I got in the industry actually around the age of 20 years old. When I got in the real estate industry, the only person that I knew that was doing any sizable amount of business other than this random kid was a family friend who was mainly in the foreclosure business. Okay. What's very interesting about this story was that I had this big glamorous idea of what I thought real estate was. I feel like we all do, right? Like we don't know what it is until you're really in it. And I was watching $1 Million Listing New York. This is over 10 years ago. Okay. Yeah. So it was a little bit more of the more ghetto version of $1 Million Listing New York, but still nonetheless, I'm watching Ryan Serhant and Frederick Eklund at the time sell, $10 million condos and making $100,000+ checks. Right. I get into the industry back in 2015, and I'm helping this woman because she does foreclosures. I'm helping people, her and the banks evict people from their homes. That was my first job in the real estate business. So, imagine a 20-year-old kid knocking on a door trying to negotiate a cash for keys. That's what I did. And then I took pictures of the house. So my first year in real estate was the weirdest, strangest experience I think anyone's ever had in the industry. And I actually did not even sell my first house until about 11 months in, because I left my mentor after 10 months because she kept promising me that I was going to make all this money, but she was only making 200 grand, so what percentage of her business could she really give me? Right. It wasn't really a ton of business at the time. Right. Even though to me, I thought it was a bunch. But, long story short, I switched brokerages. I joined another guy and ended up selling 2 houses back to back. And I was like, okay, got it. Like, this is what it's like. I can make 10K, 15K a check. Like, this is cool. Let's try this again. And I went on over the next 4 years to go on a crazy run where, by the age of 25, I was making about $1 million a year in the business, all residential. But a lot of my business came from investors, right? Like helping them find investment property, like single family, 2 family, 3 family, 4 families, either rentals or to flip. And I learned the game of finding good deals. And once someone referred me a commercial real estate deal, it changed my life forever, because I was so used to making 5, 10, or 15K a check, right? Like that's just what we make it as residential agents, and mainly in New Jersey and a lot of across the country. But I got referred this commercial deal, and I made $100,000. And it was very similar work, and it wasn't drastically harder. It wasn't like this, very complex transaction. It was a very similar type of thing than I was used to. And I had made 10 times as much money on this single deal. I was like, whoa, how do I do that again? Right? Because I was selling about 10 or 12 houses a month at this time, which is a crazy amount of volume. And I was like, wow, I could just do 1 deal a month instead of 10 or 12. Right. And work with maybe a couple select people. And I just went on this ridiculous run over the last 5 or 6 years on the commercial real estate side of the business, and, got into the consulting. I also own a bunch of properties now, and, got kind of shifted more into the investor world. But it's like that one transaction changed absolutely everything for me, because I realized that like what I had been taught doesn't necessarily need to be the truth. Right. And I found, this allowed me to build what I have today.
So, okay. So you started out evicting people. Cash for keys, right?
Yep.
And you started selling homes. All right. So you were able to scale over 4 years to make $1 million a year. So one of the things that I look at, and I've been in the business a couple of years, and I go to events and I hear these guys talk this game that you're talking, right? And they talk, well, I have my assistant and I have this, but they don't tell me the bits and pieces and the metrics they had to do to get from those first 2 houses back to back to 12 houses a month.
Sure.
Tell me the process. Tell me what either snapped in your head, clicked in your body, got rid of anxiety. Tell me all that shit, because that's what people need. That's what agents really need to hear, because hearing you do 12 deals a month is really great, and it's great for Henry and everything, but we don't know how you did that. And that's what people want to know. And continuously and consistently, agents want to know how to do that. Because let's face it, this is a simple business, but it's not easy.
Yeah, I agree. So you might not like the answer, because I feel like it's a lot more simplistic than people realize.
I'm going to love the answer no matter what it is.
So long story short, I was at Keller Williams many years ago, and Keller Williams had something called Bold. Okay. Bold was this, not a great training, but it was done by a great man. Okay. And that trainer, basically there was something called a Bold 100, which is like basically the whole purpose of this coaching program. Okay. Was to basically just get people to make calls. That's all it is. Okay. And at the time, like when I was doing it, I was already doing prospecting calls, right? I had an auto dialer. I would upload my expireds, cancels for sale by owners, and then circle prospecting. The difference though, is that I understood just from the only thing I really took away was the magnitude in which it had to be done. Okay. So let me explain. Going into this, I was already, setting 1 or 2 or 3 appointments a day. And that comes from, just calling my expireds in the morning. I would get to the office at 6:30 in the morning. I would hit the phones. I would start making my expired calls at 7:30 in the morning every day. Okay. So because I didn't want to be the 10th person to call them. I wanted to be the first person to call them. And I'd rather them tell them I'd rather them tell me it's way too early to call them than not to call them. You know what I mean? And by the way, most of the time I was the first person who called them, and I set an appointment before anybody else. And that allowed me to, set more appointments than most people. Okay. But what I realized was, and I only had started to do that maybe 2 hours, Bold taught me the difference of magnitude, which was something called the Bold 100, which is 100 conversations in a day. Most people don't even track how many conversations they're having.
No.
Right. So most of the time they're just like, yeah, I speak to a lot of people, right? Like they have no idea conceptually how many that actually is. So like in our coaching program, a big piece of it is just metrics, starting to track metrics, just like any business should, right? Because once you actually identify what you're doing on a regular basis down to the T, I'm having this many calls, this many conversations, this many appointments, this many offers made, right? Once you actually understand the data behind your business becomes predictable. So all I did, because listen, I'm going to tell you right now, I still don't think I'm the best on the phone. Okay. But one thing I'm willing to do more than most people is I am more consistent than people. That's it. And I told myself, I'm just going to go to the office and I'm going to dial until I have 100 conversations a day, every day. Okay.
Henry, what's a conversation? I got to ask you a stupid question. What's a conversation?
Any type of real estate conversation where, okay, I only tracked it when I did this. My first part of my script, right? Hi, my name is Henry with XYZ Real Estate. I was calling, I was calling because I saw that your property had recently come off the market. And I was just curious if you'd be totally against selling the property. I mean, it said this like 10 million times, so I should know what it said, right? Like I still know the script, and I still, right, for back then. That's all I did. But the script, the conversation just gets a check mark as soon as they respond that they are an appropriate property owner. That's all I cared about. Is that I wanted to make sure I spoke to a decision maker. I spoke to John, the homeowner. That's all. And if John said, hey, I'm not, I appreciate the call, I'm not interested. Or even if he said, screw you, I'm not interested. Fine. Right. At the beginning of my career, I would count it. I mean, then obviously as you get, farther and further in your career, you can start like being, a little bit more, conservative with how you track your conversations. But as long as you're speaking to a decision maker about real estate, to me, that's a conversation. Right. He doesn't have to say I'm interested in selling. Right. So I did that 100, and then I eventually got to the point where at least 3 or 4 days a week, okay, I would hit 100, and the rest of the time it would be between 50 and 80. And if you're wondering how long it would take me, it was between 7:30 in the morning and 1 in the afternoon, nonstop. Okay, besides a bathroom break and getting some water, right? That was it. I was just uber focused for 5-6 hours a day, every day. Sometimes it took me 8 hours, and sometimes it took me 5. And I just ripped every day, because what I was able to do during that period of time was stack a database, book 3 or 4 or 5 appointments. And after 1 o'clock, I just left the office and I was on my appointments all day long. And that's it. And I built a team of support staff to handle the transaction management, the listing coordination, all of it. So all I had to do was speak to people to set appointments and then conduct the appointment. That's it. And if you just do that every day, at that magnitude, is it really that difficult to close on 12 listings a month, 10 listings a month? No, I was on 3 or 4 listing appointments a day, 5 and 6 days a week.
So one of the things that there's a lot of problems that I see, because I do actually at this time every Friday, I actually do what's called a plan and prep session. And we talk about schedule all the time. I talk about wins and losses and schedules. I talk in that realm. I don't go off into a lot of things, but a lot of things relate to schedule, right? Mm-hmm. And one of the biggest things that I hear, and I don't hear them say this exact thing, but I'm in my own way. Distractions, right? You had focus. Was it just that you just needed to have that focus, and you just were that disciplined? You were that clear on everything where nothing got in your way? You didn't, like, if you were doing it from home, you didn't like wander around the house, or you're at the office, you didn't like go get a cup of coffee, or let yourself get distracted. I tell people one of my biggest distractions is one of the reasons I don't work on my house all the time is the refrigerator, right? So, those things get in my way. How did you not let shit get in your way in order for you to do those 2 to 3 to 4 listing appointments a day and do 12 units a month? Talk to me about that.
Yeah, I think that I just realized that everything else is it doesn't get me to my goals. Like I was so determined to prove myself, and I still am, right? But it became like originally it was to prove myself to other people, right? To my parents, my grandparents, my family, like everyone in my family, my friends, just to prove it was like proving to them and myself that I was right about my ability and what I'm capable of. Today, I'm just here to prove what I believe is my true potential. That's why I'm still doing the same thing. And I'm not saying look, I want you to understand that distractions come in all shapes, sizes, and looks, right? Like, it's not like, for some it's, walking into the conference room or the kitchenette of the office and talking with a coworker. For some other people, it's the refrigerator at their house. For some other people, it's doom scrolling on social media, right? Like, it can be all different types of things, but it's realizing in the moment, like, hey, how can I separate myself from these things? Because the only difference that I feel like I made, because I was at the office at this time, right? I mean, I work from home now and have for many years now. Just how I built my business. But what I did was I was in the office every day, 6:30 in the morning, and I knew that people would walk in and say things. I had AirPods in, right? Like, I was making my calls with headphones on, so I couldn't talk to other people. And if I went into the kitchen to go grab something, I literally just said, "Hi, I'm on a call. I'll talk to you later," right? Like, I initiated because I didn't want to be distracted. Like the thing, like the refrigerator, there are just interesting ways that we can avoid these types of things where I say, hey, I just get to have my lunch. For example, now today, I don't get to eat anything until after 1 p.m. That's the way I work. Okay. I don't eat anything. Zero. I do intermittent fasting, and what's just what works for me. I don't eat till 1 o'clock. So I just work all day until 1 o'clock. And if it's after 1 o'clock, I can leave what I'm doing here to go get food. And I try to do Zoom calls while I'm eating. I try to multitask while I'm doing it because it doesn't actually make you money, obviously, right? But it's like, how can I just make slight tweaks in these distractions so I can either multitask or eliminate them, or at least minimize the amount of distraction from it?
So distraction was never really a big issue for you. You just decided it wasn't going to happen. It was a pure decision, correct?
Correct.
All right. So moving along, I mean, I like to learn as much as I can about people that are on the broadcast, and you and I've known each other for a while, and that really isn't a lot knowing. So I've looked at a couple of different things, and you did a video about schedule, okay? And this is really important. And I know I do a session every Friday on this, and I want to talk about that because you are able to set things up in a several hour system. If you could just quickly give me what your schedule was, and this is how it happened and how you set it up. Because a lot of people say, well, I got this, I got that, and they allow distractions. They allow interruptions, right? And I've always said nobody ever died from a real estate transaction. So if your buyer's calling you about the appointment this afternoon, don't pick up the fucking phone. So Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree. So I believe $1 million agent schedule is the following. In the morning, first thing you should do, you should be, number one, arriving to your place of work. I don't care if it's an office, your house, or wherever. You're getting to your office, right? Like, this is my office in my house, okay? I like to arrive before my competition. So, like, I recommend before 8 o'clock in the morning, number one, okay? Because I feel like this industry is one of the only industries where people sleep in. I think it's very entertaining. So that's number one. Get to the office before your competition. First thing you do when you get to the office is that you have a daily team meeting. I don't care if it's by yourself or with your organization. Okay.
Good point.
It should be anywhere between 5 and 15 minutes. And by the way, with 40 people, we get through in 15 minutes. We do our morning huddle. Okay. So it should not take that long. And all you're doing is reviewing today's schedule, making sure it's correct. Okay. Reviewing your pipeline. Who do I need to call today? And then what red flags do I need to handle before I hit before I hit the phones? What needs to happen? Okay. And then for 8 a.m. to 8:15 maximum. Now you're from 8:15 till 8:30, 8:45, or 9 o'clock, depending on the amount of red flags. I'd always recommend trying to get on the phones by 8:30 in the morning. Okay. Because by the way, your prospects are awake and ready for a phone call, right? You're like, oh, I can't call before 9 o'clock. You're making up excuses now. Okay. So you have 15 minutes or so to handle all your red flags. By 8:30 in the morning, you're on the phones. Now, you should be on the phone from 8:30 a.m. until minimally 12 noon. Okay? That, to me, is a window of prospecting time. You should just be on the phones speaking to people about real estate, right? If they're willing to sell, they're willing to buy, whatever it is, right? Like I would preface, in my opinion, actually, they should only be seller conversations until 12 noon, period. Just trying to go after a listing or go after people who are at least open to the idea of selling their property, period, and a story until 12 noon. Now, residential and commercial real estate, very different games.
Right.
For residential agents, the whole purpose of those calls is just to be setting appointments. So you're on the phone now for 3.5 hours, 8:30 till 12, 3.5 hours, just setting appointments. That's the whole purpose of the call. Okay. If you just find out they're interested in selling, you didn't do your job. You want to set an appointment to go list the property. Okay. And then after 12 noon, you do about an hour's worth of follow-up minimum, whether you're doing residential or commercial. Okay. Commercial, the only difference is that you don't need to set appointments on every single call. I just need to clarify and get enough information from them in order to sell the property off market. Okay. Now, afternoon sessions. After your 1 hour of follow-up, which you could eat, you can eat during your follow-up calls, right? It makes it, you can double task, right? Now after 1 o'clock in residential, you should just be on appointments. That's it. Nothing else is more important. You should be on I basically had a 2 o'clock, a 4 o'clock, and a 6 o'clock listing appointment every day, Monday through Friday, right? And sometimes I'd adjust it where I would do, maybe an extra one if I had to squeeze things in, right? Depending on the distance between houses, right? You could just do a 2, a 4, and a 6, right? If you only do, and you do a smaller market, you could do a 2:30, a 4, and a 5:30, maybe like a little bit faster schedule, right?
Right.
So
right.
Every day you should just be on appointments. And if you're like, oh, well, I went on a buyer appointment and blah, blah, blah. Like, listen, I would recommend you do showings on the weekends, okay? Or 1 day a week you choose to do showings. Everything else should be listing appointments, okay? It should be scheduled that way. And if you're like, hey, like I'm getting way too busy, great, hire a showing agent that you can pay $50, or $25 a house or $50 an hour to go show houses for you, because it's not worth your time to be showing houses, right? You should have listing appointments if you want to be $1 million agent, okay? Is exactly what I did. I would just all the junior agents that I had, they just showed houses all day long. That's all they did after the calling sessions. Okay. Commercial, very different. Commercial real estate, you spend from 1 o'clock to 4 o'clock, 3 hours minimum a day, just trying to sell the inventory you've generated, the off-market inventory, all the stuff that we've generated. You need to sell it. You need to represent both sides. We don't just list and hope and pray like the residential business, right? In commercial, we need to represent both sides. So we need to hunt for buyers. So my team and we spend 3 hours a day minimum just hunting buyers for our product, right? Trying to negotiate deals, pitching deals for 3 hours minimum a day. And then after 4 o'clock in the commercial business, then you can go on appointments, right? Because it's not as important in this industry, right? So after 4 o'clock, if you want to go on 1 or 2 appointments, it's fine. Those two schedules, if you follow it religiously and you build support staff around you, you build showing agents around you, and you're prospecting with purpose, right? And you with a good script and you follow your systems, you do good follow. It's very hard to not make good money.
Okay. So prospect with purpose completely makes sense. I get it. 100%. Everybody gets that, right? I hope everybody gets that. So the Florida market, New Jersey market, two completely different animals. They're probably like polar opposites right now, right? So when we talk about making your calls, we're talking about looking for sellers.
Sure.
That would be for sale by owners. That would be circle prospecting. It would be expireds.
Yep.
There's not enough for sale by owners, not enough expireds out there. How do we keep making calls every day to be able to continue making these calls for 3.5 hours? What am I missing? What is the agent missing that says I have nobody to call?
I'm a huge circle prospecting fan. We still do it today in commercial real estate. I did it every day in residential, because the cool thing about circle prospecting, in my opinion, is that you have ultimate choice. Think about it: expireds, canceled, withdrawns, and for sale by owners. You have zero choice.
Right.
You just get to call what comes up, right? And it could be randomly anywhere, right? However, circle prospecting, you get to go, hey, I want to call that market, that neighborhood, that area. I want to become the agent in that neighborhood. Amazing, right? Commercial real estate. I want to sell X asset class in this area. Amazing. You get to have so much control over the product, right? Because what you prospect, you will sell, right? So you have full-blown control. I don't care if you're in New Jersey, where it's got a very tight inventory, or Florida, where it's an overabundance and things are having trouble selling, or anything in between. Wait, it does not matter. You can circle prospect the markets that are trading, because there are still areas that are trading in any market. Period. End of story.
So there's never an excuse not to have enough places to call with the circle prospecting and being comfortable with it. What about practice, Henry? What about practice? I mean, we haven't talked about role play or practice at all. How important was that for you? Did you do it? And how important is for the agent today? And where does that go in the schedule?
Yeah, so I was very fortunate enough where I very early on in that time period of my life, I had like 2 or 3 friends that were kind of, kind of new to the industry. So I brought them in to my team, and we just role played for 5 minutes in the morning. Like, I don't think role play needs to be anything more than like either 1 objection a day, 2 objections a day maximum. Like, which, I mean, role playing can happen very quickly. People just like make it a bigger thing than it is. I mean, you and I could role play 3 objections in the matter of 5 minutes. Like, it doesn't have to be a long dragged out thing, right? Because most people like try to start from the top, which at the very beginning, what I did was that I just would read the whole script top to bottom, right? Like at the very beginning, because I didn't know it. So I would just read it top to bottom until it literally just became like muscle memory, saying the ABCs, right? And then once you do that, which is step 1, step 2 is learning the objection. So anything on a phone call that would come up and I didn't know the answer to it, I just would write it down. And then the next morning I just say, hey, this is the objection I got yesterday. And we would just start at the objection. Hey, I have a friend that's in the industry. Okay, great. It would just be like, hey, ring, ring. Hey, I have a friend that's in the industry. Okay, I can totally respect you have a friend in the industry and you don't want to burn a bridge. Just curious, would you be totally against a second opinion? Right? And like, it just drilling and drilling and drilling. And like, that's all it is. Right? And like, just being, all it is just being fast to the objection. That's it. I'm not even saying it needs to be an amazing objection handler, but obviously the better it is. It's about speed and the wittiness. Right. And
exactly. And you just hit the nail on the head with any objection. It's just how fast you answer it, and you don't like flutter, right? You don't waver on it. All right. So we talked about schedule. We talked about role play. We've talked about who to call and what to call. Okay. So Henry, you're a commercial real estate agent. You're a commercial real estate expert in how to do the business, invest in the business, manage the properties. So I guess people would want to hear a little bit about commercial real estate. And let's talk a little bit about, if you would, a transition that any agent can make, whether they want to do one commercial deal or they want to do several, or they want to get full into commercial. What's number one? What is the difference from transitioning? I'm sorry, from residential to commercial, and how does one do just a couple, or how do they transition to the whole thing? So it's a threefold question.
Yeah, I'm actually a huge fan of being a dynamic agent. I'm a fan of being an agent who can do it all. Anything that comes across your plate, you are able to support them. Okay, like whether it's a rental, residential single family, a small multifamily, a commercial property of any size, a business. Like, I think it's important to understand how it works, right? Like, if anyone comes across anything real estate related, I want to be able to be the go-to person. Now, I refer stuff, right? Like nowadays, I just refer my residential transactions, right? People come to me, their friends and family, about selling houses. I'll just refer it to people who I know can do a better job and spend more time on it, right? However, because like, look, depending on the stage of your business, like right now, like we do several $1 million a year in commercial. It's where I want to focus my personal time. I'm not going to take a $2,000 a month rental. I'll refer it out to people who can handle it. Different part of your career, you might be different, a different position where people are like, I need every dollar. Then you need to understand how it works. Okay, so let's break it down. The biggest differences, in my opinion, residential to commercial. Residential, number one, is all about setting up listing appointments and then conducting those listing appointments, because whoever has the most listings typically makes the most money. That's almost for sure in every market all across the country. Okay, that's how the game is played. Like, if you're wondering, like, how do you win the game? Have the most listings. If you have the most listings, you typically will win the game in the residential world of real estate. Okay.
Right.
Commercial has nothing to do with listings. Nothing to do with it. Okay. It's a much more unique type of game where it is whoever controls the most good quality product at fair prices, whether off market or on market. Okay. Whoever controls, who can find the best quality opportunities at fair prices, right? And has the ability to then find buyers and is connected with buyers, because it's both sides of the coin. We represent both sides on 100% of the transactions we close. Okay. So it is more about, how do you control both sides in the commercial real estate business? How do you build up a strong book of buyers who are serious, active, and ready to buy something of an XYZ type of product in XYZ area, okay, who are vetted and ready to buy, and then finding products specifically for those people, right, and having a good process to generate those opportunities and generate more buyers for those deals, right, and putting those deals in front of those buyers. Like, it is so much it has very little to do with just setting up appointments and conducting appointments, right? Now, the last thing I'll also say is that the evaluation of the assets is very different. In residential, you literally can go on Zillow, do a circle radius around a neighborhood, find 2 or 3 houses in the same neighborhood, similar layout. They're both 4-bedroom, 2.5 bath, 2-car garage, a decent backyard or whatever, pool and no pool. Like, you look at it and everyone can tell, like, there's so much transparency, okay, around home values. Most homeowners can easily go on Zillow and get a rough gauge of a Zestimate plus looking at their neighborhood, their houses, right. Because, house A and house B can be very similar, okay? Yep. They can look identical, be somewhat identical, sell for similar prices. That's pretty simple. Commercial real estate. You can have 2 identical properties side by side, 2 10-unit multifamilies, 2 10,000 square foot shopping centers, 2 10,000 square foot industrial buildings, 2 20 key motels or hotels. You can have the same exact property side by side and they're worth completely different numbers. Completely different. Because it's more about the dollars that it generates. Right. Okay. So if one is, let's say they've both been owned for 40 years, both 2 10-family multifamily properties next to each other. They're both 60 years old. They're like 1980s or 70s or 60, whatever it is. They're 60-year-old. Okay. Whatever it is. Okay. Yeah. 60-year-old product. One guy's owned it for 60 years. The other guy just bought it 2 years ago, and he bought it 2 years ago. And has raised the rents and made it gorgeous and whatever, right? Top tier, looks beautiful. He updated all the units, changed the roof, did everything, and he got new tenants in there, all paying top dollar rents. The guy who's owned it for 60 years, maybe never touched the rents in the last 30 years. They're still only $1,000 a month when it should be $2,000 a month. Okay. Right. Needs a lot of capital expenditure, right? It needs to be fixed up a lot. Right? It needs a new roof. Every unit needs to be renovated. It's only generating, maybe less than half the amount that the property right next door is generating. They're both 10-unit multifamily properties. One is generating, $2,000 a month per unit. One is generating $1,000 a month per unit. Right? So the dollars it's generating is one of the biggest indicators. And most people, they don't understand the math. Right? Thank God the one class that I did very well at in school was math. My dad was a math teacher growing up, right? So I got very good at math. And it helps a lot today because I can do quick mental math very fast, with deals. So it allows me to underwrite properties within 30 seconds when most people would need 3 hours, right? So once you understand the game of underwriting and how the game is played, because our team is very good at finding off-market deals, very good at finding the right buyers for it, and we're really good at negotiating. This allows us to make lots of money on repeat.
Okay, so you got an agent that is pretty good at what they do as far as real estate and residential is concerned, and they've got some people they're working with that are looking for commercial deals. You said you guys are excellent in finding off-market deals. What does this residential real estate agent do without knowing you or knowing and having connections and having the knowing a guy, right? Yeah. How do they do this? How do they actually find that property? How do they actually help that friend of theirs or that client of theirs? How do they do that?
Yeah. Okay. So very simply, you need the right tools. Okay. You cannot do it without the right tools. And most of the time they just kind of put their hands up and they go, I don't know what the tools are. Therefore, I just go to other agents who have the client, which in residential mindset, I mean, I see this all the time. Residential agents just go to an agent who has the buyer or who has the seller instead of trying to find it on their own. Okay. Right. My mentality is, why not just learn how to do it on your own? So all you need is a tool like Reonomy as an example. Okay. Reonomy is basically the commercial real estate tax records. That's really, it's basically all it is. Okay. And you'll go into it and you can pull a list of any type of property you want in any area you want. And it has most of the phone numbers there. And you just call them up and you can call circle prospecting for sellers at any time that you like. Okay. And then it also works in reverse. So you could pull a list of people who've bought property in the last 1 or 2 years of a specific asset type in a specific location and say, hey, Bob, it's Henry with XYZ Real Estate. I was calling to see if you'd be open to buying another property similar to the one you just bought. And that's the game. Because if you could just circle prospect for sellers, doing this exactly like I've explained, and you could circle prospect basically for buyers the same exact way, because that doesn't work in residential, right? You can't circle prospect for buyers. It doesn't really make much sense. I mean, you can kind of find a few here and there that have been flipped, and you can see maybe who bought it, right? Like, but it's not the same. In commercial, most people, if they don't want to sell, they want to buy, right? So it's a lot more fluid of a business versus so black and white. Where you're not going to call up a random homeowner and be like, "Hey, do you want to buy a flip down the street?" Right.
Right. So when you're making your calls now, your calls, like you said, you're hunting, right? You're hunting for that property to make it an off market. And I mean, is there, aside from saying, "Hey, it's Henry, I saw you own this property here. I was interested if you're taking offers for it, if you're looking to sell it, or where you're at with your property." Is that basically it?
Yeah. Hey, my name is Henry with XYZ Real Estate. I was calling you about your property. I work with a client who's looking to buy more properties in the area, and I was just curious if you'd be totally against selling it.
And then you flip it when he says no, you flip it to see if he's looking to buy other properties.
Yeah, I can totally understand you don't want to sell it. I can understand that. I feel the same way about my properties. I get calls all the time, but I am just curious, Bob. I see that you own a couple properties here. I'm just curious. I mean, if I came across another interesting opportunity similar to the one that you have here at 123 Main Street, would you be totally against buying another property? And we just say that 500, on a dialer, 50 to 100 times a day per agent.
So I want everybody to recognize the script, the process, the whole thing. It's really not much different than we would do in a residential prospecting calls, residential prospecting.
Very similar.
It's basically the same thing. It's just a different product. And once you get the yes or the no, that's where the change in numbers as is with the difference in comparisons. So you're not looking at, you're looking at more of it's all numbers rather than competitives and comparisons to a point, correct?
A large portion of it is dollars versus comparison to next door. There's obviously some level of that, of course, but it's first things first is learn how to underwrite the numbers.
So I want to get to something that I learned a long time ago, and I think it's one of the most misunderstood phrases in the world. And a lot of people use it, and I'm not sure they know what they're talking about when they use it. And that phrase is cap rate, right? So when you're talking about purchasing a building or selling a building, you're going to use a cap rate. Talk to me about how you use it and where it comes from.
Yeah, so a cap rate is a really simplistic term, okay, but it's an overcomplicated way of essentially just saying, if I bought the property in cash, what would be my rate of return per year on the money invested? Okay. So again, really simply, if you bought a property that was at a 10% cap rate, which would be a pretty damn good deal. Okay. Basically means that if you invested $100,000 to buy it, so let's say it's listed for $100,000, a 10% cap rate means that it's generating $10,000 a month in net operating income after all the expenses are paid. Okay, so that means if I had no debt on this property and I paid cash $100,000, I'd be making $10,000 or 10% a year on my money. Okay, a 5% cap rate is just 5% a year on my money, right? Now, obviously, as an investor, we want the highest cap rates in most markets because obviously we want the highest returns, right? That's all cap rate means.
So when people are selling a property and they say, well, what cap rate are you using to value it, when they come up with a number, is that different than what we're talking about?
No, it's the same thing. But what happens is that obviously over the course of thousands of transactions, tens of thousands, millions of transactions in a specific area over time, with interest rates obviously fluctuating, cap rates rise and lower, right?
Right.
So you get, depending on the product, certain types of product might sell for a 6 or a 7% cap rate, right? And it's really just a quick gauge of just saying, where's the value roughly on this asset? Because basically, if you talk to somebody and I know the market is a 7% cap rate, right? Most product right now is trading between a 6.5 and a 7.5 cap. Okay. Most products somewhere in that range. Okay. Especially in New Jersey. So if you talk to somebody and they go, hey, I want a 4 cap, right? They're not that motivated. Right. So it's just a quick gauge of okay, got it. They're way off of the mark.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So because I hear it a lot, and a lot of times when you talk to when you talk to some people, it's like, oh, what's the cap rate? And I don't think a lot of people understand the difference between cap rate and the difference and yield rate. Yield rate, basically, the way I look at it, is cash on cash return with whatever you're putting in there and what people want to make on their money. You talked about, if you paid entirely cash for it.
Well, there's a lot of specific terms that we can go into. I mean, like literally there's there's like a textbook's worth of individual terms in the commercial real estate industry that, and a dozen of them just have to do with the way you would look at return metrics.
So is there anything that when agents are getting into commercial and they're going from from residential to commercial, or being in the business that you're in as deep as you are, is there anything that's misunderstood, that's assumed, that shouldn't be?
I would just, to reiterate, stop calling other agents who have a portion of your deal, right? Learn how to find the seller or the buyer for your deal. Get something like Reonomy as an example. Learn how to prospect for the seller, learn how to prospect for buyers. It's really not that complicated, number one. Number two, most of the time, residential agents will just list I love watching on LoopNet as an example. I look for people who are residential agents who listed commercial properties, because 9 times out of 10, they're listed at a completely wrong number. And I'm just hoping it's wrong in my favor. And sometimes it is, right? They're undervalued because they're not understanding there's a lot of key metrics that they're missing, right? So don't just take a listing, right? Like, and if you don't know how to evaluate a property, you can obviously reach out to me. We work with agents all over the country, all different asset types all over the country, where we can co-broker the deal. I can support you in selling it, right? Where it's really, there's a lot of nuances that you need to be paying attention to. So, don't just think that the game is not played the same exact way. And you sometimes when you're playing that game, you end up screwing it up for everybody.
No, absolutely. And that's really in mostly anything too. So, hey, tell me this. Where are the best opportunities in commercial real estate these days?
Best opportunities.
Is there a niche?
I would just say focus on, if you're a residential agent, start focusing on either multifamily, industrial, or retail. Okay. Those are the 3 main core types of products. That's, again, multifamily is just any apartment buildings, right? Apartments of 5 units to however many units. Shopping centers. I'm a big fan of, multi-tenant shopping centers, and also warehouses. Okay. Those 3, depending on your market, typically there's one that's better than the rest, right? Like, as an example, in New Jersey, those 3 asset types are like 70+% of the business of all the transactional volume, right? 80% of all the transactional volume right now, right? So you have the ability where I'm trying to find what is transacting at the highest rates, and in your local market, it might be predominantly something, right? And just try to figure out what asset class that is. And Reonomy would help you do that, right? You could just see what has sold in the last 12 months for this asset class, this one. And you just reference all of them and say, okay, got it. In my market, most transactions are happening with this asset class.
So we talked about the differentiating different markets in Florida and New Jersey having to do with residential. And I think it's a really good example of a difference, right? Is there a difference in commercial in those areas as well? And are the markets that different?
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, okay, yeah, cool.
Yeah, the same types of functions apply.
All right, so I want to ask you a really crazy question. So as you know, I live in New Jersey and been in real estate a very, very long time. And one of the things I see a lot of things happening, and then I see nothing happening. My express question has to do with warehouses. So one of the things I have seen in New Jersey, specifically in Bergen County, is I've seen a lot of warehouses be built. I mean, I'm talking huge structures.
Yeah.
And they're empty.
Yeah. So great point. So as an example, big box, like the big box warehouses that you're seeing, right? There is a lot of vacancy. The majority of all the vacancy in warehouses is actually in the much larger spaces, like 100,000+ square feet, 200,000+ square feet warehouses, right? However, those they were kind of overbuilt because everything switched with COVID, where everyone was needing a lot more storage space, right? And now what's happening is it's sort of gotten to the point where that type of product isn't as necessary, it's not as needed right now based on the demand metrics, right? So there's not as much demand for it, which is why for me, if I'm looking at buying a warehouse right now, I like the smaller product, like 50,000 square feet or less, and split up into a bunch of smaller bays, ideally, because that type of product is very much necessary.
I have one in mind in Teterboro where they actually took down 3 or 4 office buildings and built. It's got to be 200,000 to 300,000 square foot of warehouse, and it's just been sitting there. I've seen it in the area of Southern Bergen County, all over the place, and I don't understand it. Were there mistakes made? Did they over?
No, I think they're overbuilt. I mean, especially in New Jersey, there is so much available for lease. It's insane.
Absolutely. All right, man. So aside from calling you and getting your support and going to your coaching program, what is an agent that wants to get into commercial? What should they do?
Well, I'd say first off, DM me on Instagram and just say the word script, and I'll send you my script book, okay, where it has all the scripts you could possibly need. It tells you all the questions that you can ask and talk to property owners with. So it's like all the word tracks, absolutely free. Just take the script book. We've helped several thousand agents with the script book. So definitely a really, really simple thing. Just DM me on Instagram the word script, and I'll send it to you for free. And other than that, again, reach out if you have any questions about commercial real estate, about a deal that you're coming across and you need some support. Don't act like, reaching out, makes it look weird or anything like that. It's like partnering with an agent who's done luxury houses, or and you have a $20 million luxury home you've never sold, or in order to grab that listing, you need a power agent with you. Right. So allow me to be able to support you. And that's what I love to do.
Hey man, I want to thank you so much for being on the broadcast today. I know we did a wide range of stuff. We talked a lot residential and a lot of commercial. And I want people to understand that this is what you're going to see when you talk to real people, real knowledgeable people that have drive, that really want to build a business. But one of the things I see in you, that I see in all the people I get to work with on a day-to-day basis, is the reality of what we want to do is just help as many people as we possibly can. Absolutely. And that's what this is all about. That's what this broadcast is about. And it has been for 401 weeks in a row. I want to thank you so much for being on. I got 2 more things. One is, how do I help you grow your business? If you know anyone who's trying to sell commercial real estate, or an agent who needs support in commercial real estate, I'm here to support them. My goal is to build a team of several thousand agents nationwide, and help a lot of those agents acquire commercial real estate, because that's where the real wealth is being built. And I just appreciate you having me on, my friend. Thank you so much. And of course, you were on 3 years ago. It was a different color, but this one's all special for you. This hat coming out, the black one with the Align logo on. Oh, it's on that side, on the side, coming out to you. Henry, thank you so much. Next week, we have Jess Lenovo coming on, who is the owner and founder of the Listing Labs. Again, she was on about 4 years ago, and we're just checking in to see how she's going to help us and help as many agents as possible. Thank you so much, Henry, for being on. God bless you and your family. Everybody, today is March 6th, 2026, and we're going to keep going as long as we can. Thank you, everybody. And Henry, just stay on for a second as we go off. Thank you.